Major Hollywood studios destroyed the lives of many actors during the Golden Age. They didn't just mismanage careers or make poor business decisions, they systematically poisoned, drugged, exploited, and psychologically tortured the very people who made them millions. Behind the glittering premieres and glamorous magazine covers was a corporate machine that treated human beings as disposable assets, calculating exactly how much profit they could extract before a star burned out completely. I'm going to show you 5 actors whose stories the studios tried to bury forever, and you won't believe what happened to the last person on this list. It involves the iconic Hollywood sign that everyone knows of. Once you know what happened there, you'll never look at Hollywood the same way again. Number 5. Mickey Rooney. Mickey Rooney was America's sweetheart in the late 1930s and 1940s. Those Andy Hardy movies made him one of the biggest box office draws in the world. At his peak, he was earning more money than almost any other actor in Hollywood. But what people didn't know was that this teenage star was living a nightmare behind the scenes. The studios were literally drugging him. Mickey was just a kid when MGM decided they owned him completely. They controlled when he worked, when he slept, what he ate, and most shockingly, what drugs they pumped into his system to keep him performing. Young performers were commonly prescribed amphetamines to stay awake and keep up with the frantic pace of making one film after another. They were also given barbiturates to take before going to bed so they could sleep. Mickey wasn't just taking a pill here and there. The studio doctors were giving him huge doses of the amphetamines, the same doses that bomber pilots in World War II took to keep them alert during 12-hour missions. Except Mickey was taking them every single day, sometimes multiple times a day, for years. This wasn't medicine. This was systematic abuse, designed to squeeze every ounce of profit out of a child. The studios had a whole system set up for this. They had their own doctors on payroll who would prescribe whatever the executives wanted. They had nurses who would make sure the young stars took their pills on schedule. They even had people whose job it was to monitor the kids and make sure the drugs were working properly. If Mickey seemed tired or depressed, they'd up his stimulant dose. If he seemed too wired or anxious, they'd increase the downers. By the time Mickey was in his early 20s, his body was completely dependent on these drugs. He couldn't function without them, and he couldn't sleep without barbiturates. Mickey Rooney would struggle with addiction for the rest of his life, a direct result of what the studios did to him as a kid. But back then, nobody talked about it. The official story was that Mickey was just naturally energetic and hardworking, a real professional who never complained about the grueling schedule. The truth was much darker, and Mickey wasn't alone. This was happening to child stars across Hollywood, all in the name of keeping the money machine running. Number 4. Barbara Marr. Barbara Marr was known as the girl who was too beautiful for Hollywood. In the 1920s, she was one of the biggest stars in the world, a dark-haired beauty who captivated audiences with her exotic looks and mysterious screen presence. She was so stunning that studio executives worried her beauty would actually distract from the movies themselves. But behind Barbara Marr's incredible beauty was a secret so dark and destructive that it would kill her before she turned 30. She was completely out of control, and the studios not only knew about it, they were enabling the behavior that was destroying her life. Barbara Marr was one of Hollywood's first serious drug addicts, and the studio system turned her addiction into a business model. The studios had doctors on payroll who would prescribe whatever drugs their stars wanted. They had dealers who would deliver cocaine and heroin directly to the sets. They even had people whose job it was to make sure the stars stayed functional enough to work. Barbara's drug use wasn't recreational, it was systematic and business-driven. The studios wanted her to stay impossibly thin, so they gave her cocaine to suppress her appetite. They wanted her to have endless energy for 18-hour workdays, so they gave her amphetamines. And when she couldn't sleep because of all the stimulants, they gave her heroin and morphine to knock her out. Barbara Marr died at age 29, by which time she was already married to her 5th husband. Marr, at one time or other, had been addicted to cocaine, heroin, and alcohol. But it gets even darker. The studios were making money off her drug addiction in ways that nobody talks about. They were selling stories about her wild lifestyle to the press. They were using her reputation as a bad girl to promote her movies. They were essentially turning her self-destruction into a marketing campaign. Barbara's personal life was just as controlled and manipulated as her drug use. In 1922, she staged an adoption with her own son to avoid public scandal. As she was between marriages. The studios forced her to pretend her own child wasn't hers because they thought it would hurt her image as a seductive screen siren. The really sick part is that the studios knew this lifestyle would kill her, and they didn't care. They had calculated that they could make more money from Barbara's short, intense career as a drug-addicted bad girl than they could from a long, stable career as a healthy actress. While filming The Girl from Montmartre, disaster struck. One day on set, marr suddenly collapsed and even fell into a coma, but that didn't stop production. The studio used a body double in long shots to complete the film. Her cause of death ended up being tuberculosis and nephritis, but everyone in Hollywood knew the real cause. The studios had worked her to death and pumped her full of drugs until her body couldn't take it anymore. They took a talented, gorgeous young woman and turned her into a drug-addicted marketing gimmick, then threw her away when she stopped being profitable. And when she died, they just moved on to the next beautiful girl and started the whole process over again. Number 3. Rock Hudson. Rock Hudson was everything America wanted in a movie star. Tall, handsome, masculine. He was the ultimate leading man who made women swoon, and men want to be like him. He starred in romantic comedies with Doris Day that made millions of dollars and cemented his image as the perfect heterosexual heartthrob. But Rock Hudson was living a lie so massive that it ruined his entire life. Hudson rose to fame in the 1950s, a time when a homophobic world and controlling studio system made him hide his true sexuality. Hudson was gay, a secret closely guarded in the film industry for fear that news of his sexual orientation would torpedo his career. The studio system wasn't just hiding his sexuality, they were manufacturing a fake heterosexual identity for him. There were protocols in place, from arranged dates with starlets to suppressed news stories to underground clubs that catered to famous closeted clientele. Rock Hudson was married to a secretary named Phyllis Gates from 1955 to 1958. This marriage was completely fake. It was arranged by his agent Henry Wilson as a publicity stunt to stop rumors about Rock's sexuality from spreading. Phyllis Gates knew the marriage was fake from the beginning. Bob Hoefler published a biography of Hudson's agent Henry Wilson titled The Man Who Invented Rock Hudson. He claims that Phyllis Gates attempted to blackmail Hudson about his homosexual activities. An LGBTQ news magazine called The Advocate published an article by Hoefler, who claimed that Gates was actually a lesbian who knew from the beginning of their relationship that Hudson was gay. There has only been one photograph of Hudson with the man he described as his one true love, Lee Garlington. It was taken in a bar in New Orleans in the 1960s. The level of paranoia and control was incredible. The studios monitored who Rock spent time with, where he went, what he did in his free time. They had private investigators following him to make sure he wasn't seen in the wrong places, with the wrong people. Rock Hudson spent decades living in terror that his secret would come out. Every interview, every public appearance, every relationship, fake or real, was carefully calculated to maintain the illusion that he was a straight man. The psychological toll of living this double life for so many years was enormous. When Rock contracted AIDS in the 1980s, he became the first celebrity to die of AIDS, and his homosexuality finally became public knowledge. But by then, he had spent his entire career, over 30 years, living a complete lie, all because the studio system and society couldn't accept who he really was. Number 2. Jean Harlow. Jean Harlow was Hollywood's first platinum blonde bombshell. Known for her portrayal of bad girl characters, she was the leading sex symbol of the early 1930s and one of the defining figures of the pre-code era of American cinema. Harlow was popular for her laughing vamp screen persona and her signature look, that stunning platinum blonde hair. Here's the secret the studios never wanted anyone to know. The chemical process used to create Jean's platinum blonde hair was slowly poisoning her body. In the 1930s, hair bleaching was a brutal process that involved using extremely harsh chemicals, including hydrogen peroxide, ammonia, and even laundry bleach. But Jean's hair wasn't just bleached once, it had to be re-bleached often to maintain that perfect platinum color that made her famous. Jean's scalp was constantly burned and damaged from the chemicals. She had to endure treatments that were essentially chemical burns to her head every few weeks. The bleaching agents would eat away at her hair follicles, damage her scalp, and worst of all, toxic chemicals were being absorbed into her bloodstream. But it gets even worse. The studios knew this was happening, and they didn't care. Jean's platinum blonde hair was making them millions of dollars. She was one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, and her signature look was what made her special, so they kept subjecting her to these dangerous treatments, even as her health began to deteriorate. Jean started experiencing symptoms that doctors couldn't explain. She was constantly tired, her skin looked pale and sickly, and she was having kidney problems. But nobody connected these health issues to the constant chemical treatments she was enduring to maintain her hair color. At the age of only 26, the actress died of kidney failure. Her final film, Saratoga, was released posthumously, with Mary Dees standing in for Harlow in several scenes. After Jean's death, the studios quietly changed their hair bleaching procedures and started using safer chemicals. But it was too late for Jean. She had already paid the ultimate price. Number 1. Peg Entwistle. You've probably seen the Hollywood sign thousands of times in movies and photos. That iconic white lettering on the hillside that represents dreams, fame, and making it big in show business. But what you probably don't know is that behind one of the most famous landmarks in the world is one of the darkest secrets in Hollywood history. On the night of September 16th, 1932, a young actress named Peg Entwistle left her uncle's home, walked to the Hollywood sign, climbed a maintenance ladder to the top of the letter H, and jumped to her death. Peg Entwistle's death wasn't just a tragic personal decision. It was the result of a systematic campaign of rejection, humiliation, and broken promises that the Hollywood system inflicted on young actresses. Peg had come to Hollywood with everything going for her. She was talented, beautiful, and had already proven herself as a serious actress on Broadway. She had starred in successful New York productions and had the kind of classical training that should have made her a natural fit for the movies. But Hollywood didn't want serious actresses. They wanted controllable commodities. Every time she auditioned, she was told she wasn't right for the part. Every time she got a small role, it was cut down to almost nothing. Every time she thought she had a breakthrough, it was taken away from her. The really dark part is that the studios knew exactly what they were doing to actresses like Peg. They would string them along with false promises, give them just enough hope to keep them in town, then crush their dreams slowly and methodically. It was a deliberate psychological campaign designed to break down these women's confidence and make them desperate enough to accept any terms the studios offered. Totally broke, she was forced to pose for photographers nearly naked. Unable to take it anymore, Peg threw herself off the sign that symbolizes the City of Dreams, the dreams that rejected her. On the 18th of September 1932, a woman was hiking past the Hollywoodland sign when she found a woman's shoe, purse, and jacket. She opened the purse and found a note, after which she looked down the mountain and saw the body below. After Peg's death, Hollywood did what it always did. They turned her tragedy into publicity. She became known as the Hollywood Sign Girl, and her story became part of the dark mythology of the city. But they never addressed the systematic problems that had killed her. Instead, they just moved on to the next group of young actresses and started the whole process over again. Peg Entwistle had become a symbol, but not the kind she had hoped for. She became a warning about what Hollywood could do to people who weren't strong enough to survive its cruelty.